Welcome back to another episode of Let 'Em Ride, and for the first time presented by the Guy Boston Sports Channel. Look, I couldn't begin to express enough how excited I am to be joining this amazing team and bringing you guys full breakdowns and analysis for each and every WNBA game remaining on the schedule for this year. I'm looking forward to continuing to grind hard, put in that hard work to bring you guys the high quality content with as much info as possible for you all to take and then make informed wagers with. Just as you've come to expect from Ev and Tassos and just this Guy Boston channel as a whole. So I'm not going to ramble on too long. Let's dive into things, guys. Before we get into the picks for today, let's recap how things went on Sunday. We did end up taking the Sun laying 8.5. This was easy money here. The Sun cashed this one without leaving a doubt. They won by 27, 96 to 69. Then we did take Copper over 20.5. We put a half unit on this one because of that stout Connecticut defense. Good thing we just went with that half unit. She had 10 points after one quarter of play. She had 14 at the half, 17 going into the fourth. We just needed 4 more points. And for whatever reason, she just stopped looking for a shot there in the fourth quarter. Now, DeJounte Carrington, she did play excellent defense on Ka in the second half. But something just felt strange there in that fourth quarter. It just looked like every time Ka got the ball, she was immediately looking for the teammate to dish the ball to, where typically she's putting her head down and trying to take her player off the dribble and find a lane to the hoop. So that was just kind of strange there. But yeah, we don't cash on that one. We took the Dream first half team total under 35.5. Also just put a half unit on that because that number was so low. But the Dream have been struggling so much on offense as of late that I did feel it was worth a play. But they jumped out of the gates. They put 23 points on a stout Seattle defense in the first quarter. So right off the rip, I'm ready to write that one off as an L. But then Seattle's defense shows up like I had expected. They start getting some stops. They start forcing some turnovers. And I start to think, hey, we're alive here. This one might hit. Well, we land right on the hook at 36 and we don't cash. So a 1-2 night, but looking at it money-wise, more like a 1-1 with those 2 losses being the half unit losses. Still, though, we do look to improve and have a better night tonight, but we are up 7.57 still on the season, and we're sitting at a 34-27 overall record, so nothing to cry about, but we do look to get better, like we said. So let's dive into these picks. Let's try to have a winning night tonight. So for our first game, we have the Phoenix Mercury taking on the Washington Mystics. The Mercury are laying 5, and the over-under sitting at 167.5. Although both of these teams played and lost on Sunday, the Mystics will be at home for their second straight and final game before the Olympic break, while the Mercury will be on the last game of a 3-game road trip, during a stretch that has seen them play 5 of their last 6 on the road. The Mercury will be playing their 4th game in the last week, while the Mystics will be on just game 3 in that time span. Phoenix took that blowout to the hands of Connecticut on Sunday, while the Mystics lost to the Aces, a game that saw them hold a 11-point lead after 1, went into halftime up 3, and then they ultimately lost that one by 12. Now, Washington has played a lot of games this way, tough in the first half, and then for whatever reason, they seem to crumble in the second. These two have met once on the year early in the season for an 83-80 Phoenix victory at home, but both of these teams will look a little different this time around. Washington had Shakira Austin and Carly Samuelson available for that one. They are both listed out here along with Brittany Sykes. The Mercury were without BG in that first game, but they have her available. They're just down Charisma Osborne and Shug Sutton. So over their last 5 games, both teams have struggled defensively, with the Mystics 10th in defensive rating and the Mercury 11th. Offensively, the Mystics sit at only 9th, but the Mercury have had the top-rated offense. Phoenix is first in effective field goal and true shooting percentages over that time. They're shooting 37% from deep, that's 3rd overall, and then a league-leading 48% from the field. So staying in those last 5 games, the Mercury are shooting the 3rd highest percentage from inside the paint and from the mid-range, and they are hitting the 2nd most above the break threes. Washington, in their last 5, are giving up just the 3rd fewest makes from that restricted area, or are giving up the 3rd most in the paint outside of the restricted area at the highest shooting percentage. They are allowing the fewest makes from the mid-range, but are giving up the most corner and above the break threes. Their 10 threes against per game over their last 5 is the most allowed in the WNBA in that stretch. The Mystics offensively have been more perimeter-focused much of the season, ranking 2nd to last as far as points scored in the paint, 3rd to last in second chance points and offensive rebounds. They make the 3rd most threes at the 2nd highest shooting percentage, however. They are hitting the 2nd most above the break threes, and Phoenix allows the most at the highest shooting percentage in the W this year, and the most 3-pointers made overall in general. Washington is forcing the 2nd most turnovers per game. They're scoring the 4th most points off of those turnovers, and Phoenix has ranked middle of the pack for much of the season in terms of giving the ball away. Despite their 6-18 record, the Mystics have been covering dogs throughout the course of the season with a 16-7-1 record to the number. Looking at that closer though, with lines that see them as 5-point dogs or shorter, like this one here, they are 4-4 with one push in there. The Mercury are 14-10 to the number on the season, and as favorites of 5 or less, they sit at 3-1. So as long as Phoenix isn't without multiple players, which currently, like I said, Suge Sutton and Charisma Osborne are all the only ones listed on the injury report, but we have seen some late scratches for them as of late. So check back in, but as long as that's it, I like them here on the road to bounce back with a solid win before the break. This Phoenix team should compete with the top tier teams after the break, in my opinion. They are extremely talented with the Big Four in BG, Diana Taurasi, Natasha Cloud, Kalia Copper. That should be able to go toe-to-toe with the elite teams in the W. Injuries have kept this Big Four from seeing a ton of time on the court together so far this season. And it's led to some inconsistent play from this Phoenix team as they were just trying to gel on the fly, really. I think they simply have more depth available and more talent within that depth than Washington, though, and they should be able to overwhelm this Washington defense with their offensive ability over the course of 40 minutes. So I'm definitely leaning Phoenix here with the points. For the total, it's hard to look anywhere but over in a game that features an offense that has looked as sharp as Phoenix has lately. Now, look, I know, they just put up a putrid 69 points against the Sun. But we know Connecticut has the best defense in the W this year, and we just spoke on the fact that the Phoenix Big Four just simply haven't had that much time to play all together like they did on Sunday. So Phoenix is averaging 88 points per game over their last 5, while Washington has only averaged 78 points per game over that time, but Phoenix is giving up just under 90. They do struggle defending the perimeter, which is where Washington prefers to play. So I do see the Mystics being able to get some points up in this one as well. Washington does tend to fall off in the second half, however, so maybe looking at the first half over might be the move in this one. Next up, we have the Storm taking on the Sparks. Now, Seattle is 9-point favorites in this one with the over-under sitting at 160.5. Seattle, they're on the road here for their last game before the break after a 9-game homestand that saw them go 7-2 over that time. Seattle is 16-8 on the year. They're 15-9 to the number, and they've covered in 14 of their 16 wins. They did just beat Atlanta in their last game on Sunday by 11 points. The Sparks are back home for their last game before the break after a one-game trip to Dallas in which they pulled out a 6-point victory on the road. LA is just 6-17 on the year this year. They're 10-12 and 1 to the number. I'm not seeing an injury report for either team yet, but we're going to have to keep an eye out for Seattle specifically, as we saw Skylar Diggins-Smith leave with an ankle injury and not return in the second quarter of Seattle's game against the Dream. The Sparks are down the usual Lexi Brown and Cam Brink, and Lee Yuru is also out as she's reported to Team China for the Olympics. These two, they've played once on the year, a 95-79 win for Seattle. And then over their last 5 games, the Storm have ranked 5th offensively while rolling out the top-rated defense in the league. The Sparks in that time are just 7th offensively, 9th defensively. Sparks do come in with a one-day rest advantage over Seattle, but both teams have had to travel for this one, with LA actually having the longer distance of travel between the two coming back home from Dallas. The Storm don't rely heavily on the perimeter. They attempt and make the 5th fewest threes per game. 71% of their attempts come from inside the three-point line, and Seattle is scoring the 2nd most points in the paint. They find a good bit of their buckets on points off of turnovers. They're scoring the 3rd most such points in the W, while the Sparks are giving up the 4th most and turning the ball over at the 3rd highest clip in the league. Sparks are also giving up the 4th most points in the paint, the highest shooting percentage from deep, and the 2nd highest shooting percentage overall. LA is just 3-7 to the number this year at home, with 2 of those 3 covers coming as double-digit dogs. Although we do got to give them some credit where credit is due, those 2 covers were also outright wins over the Aces. But despite this, I'm looking at Seattle here. While just 5-5 on the road this season, they're 6-4 to the number. And when playing teams below 500 this season, the Storm are 12-1 straight up. They are 10-3 to the number. The Storm are winning by an average of just under 15 points in their 16 victories this year. So I'll lean Seattle laying the 9 in this one. For the total, although Seattle plays at the 2nd fastest pace in the W, we've seen them hit the under now in 3 of their last 4, with that one that didn't hit landing right on the number for a push. LA has landed under the total in 5 of their last 6, and they're putting up only 78 points per game this year. Seattle is allowing only 77 points per game this year. The Sparks have had their struggles defensively, however. They give up 85 points per game. So for the full game under, while I'm leaning in that direction, it does scare me. I think looking at the Sparks team total under 76.5 here makes the most sense as far as total in this game, considering the defense that we have seen from Seattle over the year and the inconsistencies and the struggles from the LA Sparks offense. Next up, we have the Connecticut Sun taking on the New York Liberty. The Liberty are laying 4.5 with the over-under sitting at 152.5. The Sun, they're going to be on the road here for their last game before the break after a 3-game homestand that saw them go 2-1 with double-digit wins over the Dream and the Mercury, and that lone loss coming here in New York to these Liberty. New York is home for their last game before the break after playing 3 of their last 4 on the road, and they went 3-1 in that time. New York also has the 1-day rest advantage here as well. But they do have a handful of players listed on the injury report. Sabali, Stewie, and Kayla Thornton are all questionable, with Lainey Hamilton listed as out. Obviously, this has big ramifications on this game. Stewie's the reigning MVP, of course, and then Lainey Hamilton has been a pivotal part of New York's success both on the offensive and defensive end. So be sure to check back into this injury report before placing any wagers on this game, specifically to see if Stewie's going to play. But Sabali gives them depth in the front court. Kayla Thornton's another one on the wings. All 3 of these people are vital to New York's success. But obviously, Stewie playing the biggest factor there. But once again, check into this injury report. Be sure you know who's in, who's out before you place any wagers on this game here specifically. It's a double revenge spot for the Sun as well, though. They've lost the first 2 prior meetings at home to the Liberty by 7 in early June and then by 3 just last Wednesday in a game that they battled back to take a 1-point lead late in the fourth. But then we saw a Stewie block party, right? Led to 5 straight Connecticut misses. 4 of those misses came from blocked shots, and 3 of those blocked shots came from Breanna Stewart alone. These 2, they top the standings in the W. The Sun, they're sitting at second at 18-5, and then the Liberty are a league best 20-4. But both of these teams have been just kind of meh against the spread. New York is 11-13. Connecticut is just 10-13. But with lines shorter than 6 points as the favorite, the Liberty are 5-1 to the number. And then as dogs of 6 or fewer, the Sun are just 1-4. So the Sun, they're giving up the fewest threes in the W at the second lowest shooting percentage, while the Liberty are hitting the most threes overall per game over the course of the season. New York is hitting the 3rd most threes from above the break, and then the most from the left corner, with the Sun giving up the 3rd fewest in each of those categories. Liberty are also shooting the highest percentage from the restricted area. They're hitting the 3rd most shots from the paint outside of that restricted area at the 2nd highest shooting percentage. The Sun are allowing the 4th most makes at the 3rd highest shooting percentage from the restricted area, but just the 3rd fewest makes at the 4th lowest shooting percentage from outside of that restricted area in the paint. The Sun themselves, they're connecting on the 4th most shots from the restricted area, but they do so at only a 58% shooting rate. That's the 3rd lowest in the W. Connecticut plays from inside, and they create a good bit of their scoring opportunities off of forced turnovers. They are 2nd in points scored off of turnovers. Their perimeter defense is elite. They're led by guard DeJounte Carrington, who is a leading candidate this year for Defensive Player of the Year, even from that guard position. We saw her get after an elite scorer in Kalia Copper on Sunday. She forced her into a handful of turnovers, but the problem is, facing New York, you're not gonna get those opportunities. New York gives up the 3rd fewest turnovers and the 2nd fewest points off of those turnovers. New York is just middle of the pack in opponents' points scored from the paint at 6, and the Sun are 4th in offensive rebounds and 2nd in second chance points, while the Liberty give up a middle of the pack 8 offensive rebounds per game, the 6th in the W, but they are allowing the fewest second chance points. The Sun attempt the most free throws per game, but they're not really doing much with those. They convert those at the 2nd lowest shooting percentage. And the Liberty just really aren't going to put you on the line that much. They commit the lowest number of fouls per game, leading to the fewest free throw attempts from their opponents. The Sun are only 7th in both effective field goal and true shooting percentages, while the Liberty rank 1st and 2nd, respectively, in those categories, and they're holding an offensive rating of 107.7, tops in the W. They're 4th defensively, while the Sun ranks 2nd in that regard and 3rd offensively. So for me in this one, it's going to come down to the availability of Stewie, because if she is a scratch, I like the Sun here catching the points in a double revenge spot, as they have a low post presence, and they can take over this game if she's not out there for New York. Brianna Jones and Dewana Bonner, they both operate efficiently out of the post. And then you have Alyssa Thomas. She's just kind of that like Swiss Army knife that all these teams wish they had, right? She just does a little bit of everything, kind of like the Draymond Green in the W, play style-wise, not up top here. But speaking of up top here, she does make those high IQ plays like he does as well. For example, let's take a look. Sunday, the Sun, they have the ball for the last possession of the first half, right? The shot clock is off, and she dribbles the ball off of her foot. It rolls into the backcourt. Now, typically, right, they go back, they touch the ball, Ref kills it. Other team gets the ball for another possession. Instead of allowing the Mercury one more possession, she like kind of covers the ball away from the Phoenix defender, like soccer style, right? And like follows the ball down the court. And the clock is just ticking off as this happens. Hey, now like, sure, they ended up winning by 20 plus points, but it's these little kind of big brain plays that can be the difference in a 1 or 2 possession type game. So with all that said, if Stewie plays in this one, I'd have a hard time fading the Liberty. But this is one that I'll probably stay off of just altogether, but at least for sure until we know who is in and who's out. But for the total, that number, it keeps dropping lower, and I get why. They did put up just 139 combined on Wednesday. These two are the toughest defenses in the W, or two of the toughest defenses in the W, and both of these teams match up well defensively against each other's strengths. Liberty, they've hit the under in 5 of their last 6, the Sun in 4 of their last 5. So if all hands are on deck as far as these injuries are concerned, I like another defensive battle here. But with that low of a number, I'd probably take a peek at the over. We've seen the Sun hold the Liberty to 11, 10, and 12-point quarters in these first 2 meetings, but we've also seen them give up 28, 25, and 29-point quarters as well in those matchups. To hit this number, we would need both teams to land like in the mid-70s, or for this one to be a blowout if one of these teams breaks 80. And I just don't know if I see either of those happening here personally. I see this being a closer game. But I could see both of these teams hitting in that high 70, low 80s mark. So me, this is probably just a game that I stay away from personally. It's a battle of 2 elite teams, and it's hard to pick a side. It's hard to see which way this is going to go as far as an offensive explosion or a defensive battle. And with New York's offensive ability, Connecticut's strong defense, either one of these could happen. So probably one that I'll stay off of personally. But if you are going to make any wagers on this game, I can't say it enough. Double check that injury report. And for our late game on the slate, we do have the Chicago Sky taking on the Las Vegas Aces. The Aces are laying 14.5 in this one. The over-under sitting at 169.5. The Sky, they come into this having lost 3 of their last 4 by double digits. However, they came against the Storm and then back-to-back to the Liberty. Chicago will have a 1-day rest advantage over Vegas, but they will be on the road where they are just 5-6, both straight up and to the number. The Aces have won 4 straight, 10 of their last 11, and they have obviously been a different team since the return of Chelsea Gray. And they come into this one all hands on deck, no injuries reported currently. The Sky have been without and will remain without Elizabeth Williams. She had that surgery on her torn meniscus. So in their last 10 games, the Aces are a top 3 team, both offensively and defensively, 3rd in defensive rating and 1st in offensive and net rating. The Sky have the 6th ranked defense in that time, but only sit 10th offensively for a net rating that puts them at 9th. Staying in those last 10 games, Vegas is attempting and making the fewest shots from the restricted area, but they are converting at the highest shooting percentage. They're making the most shots from the paint outside of that restricted area and at the highest percentage, while also shooting the highest percentage from the mid-range. Vegas is hitting the 3rd most threes at the 3rd highest shooting percentage, and they hit the 2nd most left corner threes and the most from the right corner. All of this is leading to a league-high 90 points per game. Chicago has been decent defending the perimeter, however. They're giving up the 4th fewest makes from deep at the 4th lowest shooting percentage. They are giving up the 4th fewest three-pointers made from the right corner and the fewest from the left. They are holding opponents to the also 4th fewest makes and 4th lowest shooting percentage from the mid-range, the fewest makes from the paint outside of the restricted area, but they are allowing the 2nd most makes from the restricted area. Where the Sky can hurt you is on the glass. So we've seen Angel Reese quickly become an elite rebounder in this league. She's leading the league in rebounds overall per game and offensive rebounds as well. And then Chicago's Cardoso is 2nd in the W in offensive boards, so it's no surprise that Chicago is the top-ranked team in terms of offensive boards and just rebounds in general. The Aces on the season are giving up the 3rd most rebounds a game, but just the 2nd fewest offensive boards. Chicago is scoring the most points in the paint and the 2nd most points off fast break opportunities, while Vegas is 2nd and 3rd fewest in each of those respective categories. That'll be the 2nd meeting between these two. The Aces won the 1st in late June in Chicago, 95-83. Chicago held the lead after 1, and I think looking at this one, I like Chicago again early here, but Vegas full game. The Aces are 5-8 to the number as double-digit favorites, while the Sky are 2-1 as double-digit dogs on the year. Chicago consistently plays teams tough in the first quarter, though. Look, in their last 11 games, they have won the first quarter outright 10 times. So they are 10-1 in the first quarter on the money line. despite a 5-6 straight up record in that time. So I'm definitely going to take a look at them with the points here in that first quarter against a Vegas team that tends to start games a little slower. They pick up the pace like mid-second quarter, and then they put teams away in the second half. Despite a 9-1 overall record in their last 10, they are just 5-5 straight up in the first quarter. And they are winning in those 5 by an average of 3.5 points. We can get Chicago right now catching 5 points in the first quarter. Looks good to me, man. It looks good. For the total, Chicago plays at the 5th fastest pace in the W, while the Aces are playing at the fastest pace. These two went above this number, and they hit the over in their first meeting. They both have hit the under in 3 of their last 4, but considering the offensive prowess of Vegas and how hot that offense has been, I'll slightly lean over. Chicago has shown a tendency to disappear offensively late in games, however, so I think maybe a first half over would probably be a safer look than the full game in this one. But I'm leaning over regardless in this one. So that's just about going to wrap it up for the very first episode of Let 'Em Ride, presented by the Guy Boston Sports Channel. Before we get out of here, though, let's recap what we went over in this video here and talk about which way we are leaning for these games. Right now, I've got my eye on the Mercury laying the 4 and looking at the Storm laying the 9 points. Now, I'm also looking at the Sparks team total under 76.5, and then the Sky in the first quarter catching the 5 points. Now, these are all just leans right now. I've not made any of these plays official yet, but if I do and when I do, or if I find anything else before tip-off that I like, I'm going to throw all of those down into the pinned comment down there. So make sure you check back in. That way you can see if you'd like to ride along with me. Or maybe you check back in, you're looking at those picks, you're like, bro, those are all trash. Maybe you decide you'd like to do the opposite. Hey, whatever you guys decide to do, make sure you throw them down into the comments. I love to see what you guys cook up. I love talking to you guys about it. And I love nothing more than to celebrate when you guys are down there in the comments cashing. I love celebrating with you guys. So throw them down there in the comments. And hey, guys, if you enjoyed the video today, you found the content helpful or useful in any kind of way, please don't forget to smash that like button down there and hit subscribe if you have not already. Definitely helps the channel continue to grow. And hit share if you can. It's all definitely appreciated. And don't forget, guys, we do still have some content coming for you on the Let 'Em Ride channel. So don't be afraid to hop over there as well when you find yourself a little bit of time. There'll be more WNBA content for you. We've got a lot of stuff coming in the works too. So it's going to do it here for another episode of Let 'Em Ride. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you on the next one.